I am particularly proud and happy about the young filmmakers, actors, singers, writers, producers that are coming up behind my generation. In particular, Barry Jenkins. Young people understand this young man made 10, 15, 20 short films before he got the opportunity to make Moonlight. So never give up. Without commitment, you'll never start. But more importantly, without consistency, you'll never finish. It's not easy. If it was easy, there'd be no Kerry Washington. If it was easy, there'd be no Taraji Henson, P. Henson. If it were easy, there'd be no Octavia Spencer. But not only that, if it were easy, there'd be no Viola Davis. If it were easy, there'd be no Michael T. Williamson, no Stephen McKinley Henderson, no Russell Hornsby. If it were easy, there'd be no Denzel Washington. So keep working, keep striving, never give up, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. So keep moving, keep growing, keep learning. See you at work.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're in the studios of 104.9 FM, 1490 AM, Making an Impact Radio. I'm your host, Dawuud El-Amin, coming to you out of the port city of Wilmington, North Carolina. Show is called Noo Covers, straight talk, no chaser. You all know the routine. Facebook, come on in. YouTube, you're welcome to come in at this time. You all that are driving and listening, stay tuned today because we have a different format from what we usually do. In other words, I'm going to have to shut up today. I can't talk. We've got some guests in the house that we'll be bringing in, talking, having a panel discussion today about Florence 6 months later and how it affected the community. And we're coming from a panel of folks that work in the media. So I'm going to turn the show over right now to my good friend from Working Narratives who puts this all together. Ren, take it from there and we'll chime in.
All right. So
and introduce yourself.
All right. By way of introduction, Working Narratives is an arts and social justice nonprofit, and we are located here in Wilmington. We work with movements to tell great stories that inspire, activate, and enliven our democracy. We believe that social movements thrive when they can draw on participants' personal experiences and local cultures. In this particular part of the Working Narratives operations is a collaborative program that's part of our media ecology project. And that brings local journalists and other community members together for dialogue and sharing. So we owe a special thanks to our lead funder, Democracy Fund, and to Dawuud, the artist working, not the artist man, the artist working man in radio. And just quickly, I want to introduce our guests. Our guests who will help us take a deep dive into the ongoing story of Hurricane Florence are Frances Weller, who's a native of Wilmington, and she began her television career in 1982 with WECT. And for 3 years, she was a general assignment reporter. In 1986, she was named co-anchor of WECT's 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock news programs. And she is also the anchor of WECT News at 5 o'clock. And now we have Marcy Cuevas with us also. Is that okay?
Yes, you did it. Yes, you did. Great job.
She works for WWAY, and she has done so since September of 1999. And she arrived only a few days before Hurricane Florence made landfall, so she knows a lot about hurricanes. Marcy was born in San Pedro, California, and moved to North Carolina in 1985. She started at WWAY, and as a part-time editor. She moved up the ladder from editor to reporter and eventually news anchor. She was the morning anchor of Good Morning Carolina from 2006 to 2011. Adam Wagner works at the Star News, among other papers. He writes about the environment for Gatehouse ENC papers, where he helped uncover the story that Wilmington's drinking water supply was contaminated by Gen X, which is a byproduct, an industrial byproduct of potassium. So first of all, congratulations on all the work you've been doing. And this is one of the most difficult beats in journalism, covering disasters. So thank you. So it's been about 6 months since Florence. It hit Wilmington with 27 inches of rain, 105 mile-an-hour winds. Dozens of people were left dead. There were tens of millions of dollars in damage. But let's start with your personal story. Like, how did Florence impact you as an individual? And anyone who feels like it can start.
I'll jump in here. So we at the paper, our old building is just across the street here at 17th and Dawson. And in the middle of the storm, the roof started falling in. So we have a new building. We ended up getting out of that one, left at the height of the storm, and our downtown now in the Harrelson building, sort of cramped quarters, operating kind of, probably goes to my editor there, to Marcy right now, at any given time. So I think like everyone that stayed in Wilmington, we got to feel the impact of just how sort of chaotic those few days were. And I think that for anyone that was here, it was really the length of the storm that was most sort of just draining. I mean, at some point, you're just trying to do your job and wondering if that rain's ever going to stop. It doesn't feel like it is, because you're at a point where I'm sure that both you had similar experiences where there were emergency management people telling you, we've never seen this before. We don't know what this water's going to do. We don't have really a plan for this. And you're sort of making everything up as you go. And I think that was sort of that couple weeks there. And I think that we've sort of seen that in the 6 months that followed. Everyone's sort of doing their best.
Yeah, and I think one thing too, and I'm sure Fran would also agree. At least when you're on TV, you have a responsibility to be on, and so we were on for more than 80 hours. And for a lot of folks, it's learning as you go. So we were rotating folks in and still trying to get information. And that's what's so important, is to kind of, depending on the crews you have in the field and then affiliates who are also in town working as well, trying to get as much information as you can, because that's what's hard. We can't be everywhere, so we're really dependent on trying to get as much from other folks to kind of relay to people who maybe were still able to watch us with power, or folks who may have had radio. We were able to simulcast for a while. And the impact is just the stress. At first, there's a lot of adrenaline as you're working like nonstop in the TV station, and you're just going and going, and that's what's keeping you going. And we were pretty much on an 8-hour rotation with a lot of our crews. They try to sleep or do what they could for 8-hour free time, and they were back at it, whether they were anchoring or whether they were in emergency management, trying to get information that we could relay to folks who were watching and listening. And then after, it kept going. And we're like, how long is Florence going to stick around? It was a play-by-ear thing. No, we got to keep going. We got to keep going. As in, roads were being washed out. And that was like one of the longest Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday days. Is you didn't know one day to the next what was going to happen. So it was learning as you went, trying to figure out what you could do better. So it was really stressful for the days we were doing it, but we still had a job to do and trying to do as much as we could, get as much information out there, and still trying to rest or grab something to eat when we could. So it was long. And then even when we got to go home, it didn't end. That's when the flooding was starting. So it was go home, you get a break, you're actually checking on your home, because a lot of folks didn't know what their homes looked like. they were stuck at the station or if they were in emergency management and then you finally maybe had a break, I can get home. Let me go see what it looks like. And we had reporters who they got home and damaged water had come in, roof had come in, and they were looking at their belongings. It's like, so they still had to work and try to figure out how to start somewhat on moving and cleaning and repairs. And so then even when we quit having the coverage nonstop, then it was still for several days, Hurricane Florence stories, trying to find out what people needed to know the most. So it was very long. I think for 2 weeks, we were still trying to get back to normal as far as our work life, not so much home life. People were still dealing with the effects of the storm, but then trying to get back to a normalcy as far as your job. So that definitely had a big impact on the folks at the station.
Well, I think my initial impact started before the storm, and that was whether or not I was going to stay. I'm older than you all are. I've been through a few hurricanes. And so at this stage in my life, I had to make a decision on whether or not I was going to stay for what initially was a potential Category 4 or 5 storm, which could be catastrophic. I'm recently married. I have a twin sister who is really my only family here now, and they were all in Raleigh. So our news director gave us the option to not stay. We were given the option to leave. And so I had to think about whether or not I was going to stay as a journalist or go and be with my family. You know that once it's in your blood, it's hard to walk away from it. So I made the decision very early on to stay. The impact was tremendous. Your family is one place, you're in another. Then we're in a building that I felt comfortable in initially because, as I said, we've been through some hurricanes before, and while it's an old building, miraculously, it endured those storms. Well, it did not with Florence. In the midst of all of our coverage, water starts just gushing into the building, so much so that we had employees who were suctioning up water by the big trash can loads and dumping it out, coming back in and refilling it all over again. I mean, just water gushing in. And so we found areas where fortunately our studio was good so we could broadcast from there, but the building itself sustained a significant amount of damage. We were on 12-hour shifts, and so when we were able to, we try to get a nap, but a lot of times that was interrupted by rain coming in to the area where you were sleeping on an air mattress. But like Marcy said, the adrenaline gets going. You're in the middle of this storm. You know you have an obligation to your viewers to let them know what's going on. It is what we do as journalists to report about this disaster that's going on. And you really don't stop and think about the fact that you could be impacted too, that the storm could destroy the TV station. You really don't think about it, even with the water gushing in. You know, we just knew we had to keep going and keep going and keep going. The one time that I thought, did I make the right decision to stay, was when we had back-to-back tornado warnings. And we're all in a narrow hallway, just down with our heads covered. And again, some of the employees are using this vacuum to suction up the water. And you know the saying that if a tornado's coming, you can hear a freight train sound. So at this point, everybody's quiet. I'm looking down going, oh my God, is this it? And will it be my coworkers that I check out with? I'm being realistic. That's what I was thinking. And so the suction of the water, everybody's quiet, but you can hear this, and I just yell at one of the employees, and I said, can you turn that off? And my news director, my boss, looks at me and says, he's trying to save the building. And I looked at my boss and yelled back at him, and I said, I'm trying to hear the freight train. And so that was what was going on at that moment. And I think that was probably the moment that will stand out in my mind internally in the television station, because it really was a point where we weren't sure that this tornado was not going to come and seriously wipe us out. We are near the intersection of Shipyard and Carolina Beach Road, and our meteorologist came running in saying the tornado is at Shipyard and Carolina Beach Road. That was a terrifying moment.
Let me ask this question, because I was curious. I'm new to this, and I'm mental health is my background. Most of the time when storms come, I'm locked into a building with about 25. This year I was locked in again. I worked for Link, so I was with Frankie Roberts locked in his building over there with the guys coming out of prison. And then when I was able to get back to the station, we came back in, got back up, because initially our power went down and we weren't on the air. It always was FM at the time, now we have FM. But Francis, you mentioned something about family. How do you do that? Because I don't think folks realize that when they see you in the air, your family, because my family went to Atlanta, your family is your concern. That's your family. How do you do that? That's miraculous in itself, to sit there and give the information out that the people need. But in the back of your mind, telephone, where's my daughter? Where's my son? Are they okay? How do you do it?
That was probably one of the hardest things I had to do, because going through Floyd, I was young, 22, didn't really have husband and kids. My parents were safe inland, so Floyd was just, it's the adrenaline rush, didn't really think about it. But now I have 3 young children, 2 boys who are 8 and a daughter who's 6. And at first I was paranoid. I wanted my husband to take them inland to Charlotte, where we have family. But we also have family in Leland. And instead, he went to my parents in Leland. My dad has a whole house generator. And he's like, well, we'll be near you. And he's like, I don't want to leave you. He didn't want to leave me here, but I was still stressing, like, you need to take the kids and go. And that's what was really hard, because I was working and I'd still be texting or calling him, how are the kids? Okay, you don't have power, but you got the generator. All right, you guys all hanging out, you're good. And then, like when Fran said, the tornado, it was also heading this way through Leland, and the line was heading straight toward WWAY, and I had just laid down about an hour, maybe around midnight or 1, whatever time it came through, and one of our producers come running through, because we were sleeping in sales offices, wherever, on air mattresses, and started knocking on everyone's door, wake up, a tornado's coming. And I was just like, we all rushed into like an inner little building, and when they told us where the path was, and my parents' house is kind of near the station, I was like, oh gosh. And I was trying to dial, like, my husband, no one was answering, my parents, because it was kind of the middle of the night. I finally get my sister on the phone, who was over there. I was like, there's a tornado coming, because everyone was asleep. So I was worried about myself, but I was more worried about, my kids. Wanted to make sure they were safe and the tornado wasn't going to head straight toward them. So this storm was really one of the hardest as far as where do you draw the line, because we didn't know how bad as far as intensity it was going to be when we thought we were going to really get hit with maybe a category 3 or larger when we saw it coming in. That's when we were really like, what do we do? Stay, go? Well, stay, but then I was worried about the kids. So it's a fine line to walk, knowing you've got your job to do and that's what you want to do, and then you're still worrying about your family. It was rough.
Yeah, and I think that's all right. But I think that when you're on, and you're working, and you might, I'm not texting my family throughout the storm, but at some point you just have to turn the phone over, because it's not only your family that's depending on you, it's all the families that are people staying here, it's all the families that have left, that are, really that's when we're the eyes of the entire community. And that's when that responsibility becomes extremely, extremely heightened, and we're all aware of that, I think.
And I do think it's important to say this. This is reality. I think age plays a big part in that decision. When you're a young journalist, you're carving a career, you don't even really give it a thought about whether or not you're going to stay or go. You're going to stay because this is, let's be real, this is an event that can catapult your career. And so you're going to stay as a young journalist. When you get older, when you get married, when you have children, you start to say, okay, let's be realistic about this. Am I going to take a chance that I'm going to survive this and go back to my family, or am I not going to risk it? I'm going to go with them and wish my television station the best. I mean, it was different for you, Marcy, when you were in your 20s. But when you have 3 kids and a husband, you have that to take into consideration. For me, it really was, okay, I'm at the peak of my career. I'm not trying to make a name for myself. I'm not trying to carve myself into a different future. This is it for me, so do I take the chance? And then when that tornado warning came, I was more concerned about it than the hurricane. I really was, because I had a very real moment where I thought I could die. And no one can predict what these hurricanes are going to do. No one, not even the meteorologists, can predict what the tornadoes are going to do. And so I think it's a very real decision that you have to make when you know you're faced with a catastrophic storm that could take you away from your family. So not from a personal standpoint, but overall, I commend journalists who are willing to make that sacrifice because it's huge.
No, we had the radio on Coast 97.3, and they were around the clock. I mean, they packed in and kept us informed around the clock. I'm like, hey, I know you got a young man at the house somewhere. I know you worried about it. I'm texting on the phone. You okay? You know, it's like, yeah, that's real when it comes to the family. How do you think the community? How great the community? After the storm, how did we do? Because you've been here a long time. How did we do as a community coming out of the storm? What areas can we work on? What did you see? I saw a lot that we could work on. What can we work on to make sure the next one comes, we're better prepared? I think we did good, but there are a lot of areas that if the storm had hit us worse, we would have been really in trouble. And we have to recognize that and say, hey, we got to do better on these departments, especially when we're talking about getting the needs to the people as a community. So how do you think? What did you see? What do you get from the community vibe? What were your feelings?
I think the shortcoming immediately after the storm was, where do you go? How do you get assistance? That type of thing. So I think better organization, a better plan for specific communities. Some communities had never been through this, so they weren't prepared, and they didn't know where to go. And so all communities should take note from Florence, have a plan in place, know where to go to get assistance. But I do have to say this, after the storm, I think our community was phenomenal. We reached out to help each other. We, the donations came in that were just amazing to me. So I was very proud to say that I lived in a community that I saw so much caring after the storm. I don't think you get much better than what we did in terms of caring for each other, but I do think that we significantly missed the mark in being better prepared and better organized to get people in the direction, where can I go? Because I don't have any place to stay.
Yeah.
And I agree. We definitely saw a lot of grassroots campaigns popping up locally, as well as folks coming in from other areas to help. But the one thing we kept hearing about is people who were secluded, people whether they were in really rural areas, folks that also became secluded because of roads washing out, where they had to do airdrops in places like Boiling Spring Lakes, and even Southport was secluded for a while. So I think having a better plan, knowing how our roads are now, I don't think anything's going to happen overnight. They're not going to fix I-40, where if something else like this happens again, hurricane season's upon us. I don't think there's not going to be a plan in place as far as the roads by then. So we know which areas flood. I mean, the same thing like Floyd. Back in '99, Wilmington was cut off for a little while after that came through. So it happened once, and then now we see it again from Florence. So I think better plans, and whether it's the smaller communities or the counties, figuring out beforehand so residents know before, so they're not asking afterwards, like what happens, and they're calling us and we might not know. Like we don't have that information yet. So I think ideas of what to do, places where folks can go. I know the shelters were filled here, busing people out of the area, and I know a lot did want to take advantage of that because, again, they were afraid they wouldn't be able to get back home when they wanted to. So I think better ways of getting folks immediate needs in the aftermath if they are cut off, and just help as for shelter if their homes are flooded or trees on their homes, just something immediate instead of asking questions and then plans coming together after the fact.
So I think there's a whole bunch of facets to this. I think one is that it is different in Wilmington than it is when you get outside of Wilmington. Wilmington, on the whole, the city is doing okay. I mean, there are still people suffering. I'm in no way denying that. But it is way, way, way different when you go out to Burgaw or Boiling Spring Lakes. It looks like it's October still. You walk into a time warp. And I was out there last week and it was shocking to me. And I've been out there 2 or 3 times and just nothing's changed. In the city, yes, there were a lot of resources coming in. There was no plan for those resources whatsoever. And we had reporters that were at the drop-off point downtown, and there were mothers with their case of water and their food walking back to the north side. I mean, that's going to take an hour and a half, realistically. And there needs to be a way to get into those communities where we know people might not have transportation, especially after a storm, especially when there's not gas, that there's a way to set up a pod or some other distribution point. This is something the county is working on. Is
right. That's for the ordinance, because that's what we've got a lot of feedback on that end, that those type of situations that we had supplies, but they didn't make it to the people in a timely manner. It was like, okay, where do I go and how do you get it to the people? And it seemed like we didn't have a plan for that at all.
Well, and I think the other thing is that we know people are going to leave their homes. There was not a good shelter plan for this storm. The buildings that were the shelters got hit pretty hard. A lot of cases they started flooding. In a lot of cases, they had to plan for people to stay there 3 days, and the Red Cross was coming to take over. Well, the Red Cross left because it was going to be a Category 4. So you had county employees that were prepared to go 72 hours, going 8 straight days, that had never done this before. You had people in North Brunswick County that didn't take a shower for a week. I mean, that was legitimately a concern there, was that these people need to bring a portable shower. So I think that there's awareness to that now. I think we'll either see buildings firmed up or we'll see a better plan to get people out of the path of the storm pretty soon.
As Jones says, what have you heard anything about those that have been displaced? Housing that is badly needed. I mean, I helped pack up Market North. I had family that was in the Glens that's never coming back. What are you hearing on the BuzzFeed on what's going on with housing? We had the elderly downtown. They haven't got back yet. What are we hearing?
The county says there's going to be some coming online in July. The apartments downtown, the 9-story building, Baker Apartments, that's going to be, county says online January 2020, I'm sorry. We can't get the company to return our calls, but it's coming from the county. That gives you a pretty good time frame on that. Obviously, there's still a lot of people suffering.
I think the Glens is the Glens in the hands of UNCW? I don't think
so. Okay.
I hope we can clear that up, because that's what we've been hearing. We've been hearing that UNCW brought out that company, and they're not coming back at all. Folks from the Glen have been told they're not ever coming back.
You know what? I think you're right.
Yeah, that's what we've been told. We've been told UNCW brought the Glens, and that's going to be UNCW housing. So we're talking about, there's 400 some units over there of folks that's never coming back because they're not students. These were elderly and families, low-income families, because the Glen was one of those apartments that you could pop in and didn't have to pay for a deposit. So it was able a lot of low-income families to get into the Glens because you get a $100 deposit and you can get in with the first month rent. Whereas most places you go, you got a $900 rent, you got to pay $900 and $1,800 to get in. So that's a lot of families that's out there displaced, and that's what we talk about. We're trying to get a feel of what's going on out there now with them.
And I think that's the thing that we often lose sight of, even those of us who had damage at our homes. And I had pretty significant damage at my house, but it's one thing to have damage and you're going to have someone to come in and repair it. I still haven't had it repaired, by the way. But it's another when we were going to these apartments, people who lived there for years, you have basically a moment's notice to pack up everything and get out, and you're not coming back. That is hard for people to understand. And it's been heartbreaking for the residents of the Glens and for Market North. I have become Facebook friends, very friendly with a Market North resident. And I was Facebook friends with her before, but we've gotten even closer, if you will, since the storm. And she's living in a trailer now and would like to go back to Market North, but when?
We don't know.
Yeah.
The aftermath is devastating to a lot of families still out there. And that's why Pam didn't call me this week. FEMA's still here, so she usually comes on every week, and she comes on the show, and that's what we talk about. We try to find those resources that are still out there, because a lot of times we stop covering it, and the resources are still there for a lot of families. They don't know that they can still get resources and still get help. What is somebody that? First, you told one of your stories about what else? What do you have you remember most about the storm? About Florence?
Well, I'll start. We've talked about what are your most memorable moments, good or bad. 10 years from now, I'll look back on Hurricane Florence. I'll remember that I was there with my coworkers, and we got so close. It was like they felt like family. The news story that will stick out in my mind forever and a day will be the morning that the firefighters went to the house on Mercer Avenue. A tree fell on it, and a mother and her child were killed. That was devastating. It was devastating. But to look at the firefighters and the police officers who were there, and to see the emotions on their faces, to know that this really hurt them, that they could not save this mother and her child. I had never seen that before. They got down on their knees and they prayed, and it was a moment that forever will stay.
I can imagine that. Many of the people in the community knew her. She had helped win Captain Spears' campaign to be on the school board about a year ago. So she was well known throughout the community. When it happens, like we're getting phone calls, and what got me from that, my son was in Georgia, and he called me trying to get back here. And I'm like, what are you trying to get back here for? You stay where you say, well, yeah, we're trying to get back. He was close friends with her daughter, and I never knew. And so it's like he's sitting there broken down. I'm like, son, what's going on? And then my other son reminds me, he's like, Dad, they used to date one time. So he was tore down. And so it's like, yeah, it was emotional for, just trying to get him together, because he's way down in Georgia. He's in the military service way down in Georgia. And he's like, wow, how close it is with us in the community.
And that was something to see. Usually you do see the first responders are out there and they got their game face on, where they're not showing emotion and they're getting the job done. But that was the moment you saw that veil lifted, and the humanity, knowing how that affected all of them when they prayed. And that's when you also knew it was bad. And that was one of the toughest things to see. We had our reporter out there and telling us about it, and knowing that the mother and her baby didn't survive. That was really rough. And seeing a lot of the aerials of neighborhoods just totally underwater. Seeing all of that homes that had never flooded before, and just seeing people out there on boats trying to go into their homes, and people would post on Facebook video of them going in and the water up to here and talking, this was my child's room, and just pulling out their belongings and seeing all that just hits you. I was so lucky. We only had damage in our backyard. The kids' playset came down. That's nothing. I got home and we knocked on wood. It was hard seeing, like, my neighborhood didn't really have much damage, and then seeing others that just had devastation. So that's what was just.
But you got to hug your kids.
Yeah. I was the moment I was able to leave. I was like, I'm gone. I'll see you back in 12 hours.
So that sort of segues into a question I've had, which is, so when Florence first hit, one of the more distinct, I actually evacuated, but one of the more distinct memories I have is of seeing Anderson Cooper, standing on the river wall. kind of reporting on what was going on, and I thought, like, this is so incongruous with like the way that I think about Wilmington, and all of a sudden Anderson Cooper is here. What does this mean? And like, you know, a moment after Florence had subsided, all of these national reporters were gone. So I'm wondering, what are the stories you are following now as local reporters who have a responsibility to not just cover the initial attack, but the recovery and how it's affected the various communities?
I really think it's the housing story. I think that's, I mean, there are 1,200 affordable housing units down in Wilmington. That a lot of them are never coming back, and there was already an affordable housing crisis for the storm. So that's top of the list. I think the other thing is making sure the money goes to the right places. There's a lot of money flowing around right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's flowing slowly, but it's coming, and it's just going to the places where it's actually going to help the people that are hurting. I think that's another thing to keep an eye on.
You know, with the housing piece, a lot of those people have been left, and a lot of people, their whole career had to change because they're moving somewhere in another county or another state, and they lost a job because they, you know, I know mothers that actually had to lose their jobs if they pick a job or housing for their children. And so they move to the housing part, but then they don't have a job because they can't go 3 hours back and forth to work. So yeah.
And that's the thing, when you still drive around neighborhoods and you're seeing the tarps on homes, because not only do we have the affordable housing crisis right now, we also have folks who want to rebuild and can't find the contractors or good contractors. I know that's been an issue some folks have dealt with. That's something I think Pender County Schools mentioned when we spoke with them when we did a bunch of stories on the 6-month mark of Florence. They want to do some work on some schools, but they were having like delays for getting a contractor in. So you also have folks dealing with that, still living in damage who can't get someone to help.
Did Pender have a contractor steal stuff from the school or something? There was talk about that. There's a big long list of missing stuff.
Well, that was that the one, was it just stuff that disappeared post Florence?
Yeah.
There's a long list of stuff, and whether it was from shelters or like sometimes laptops. I think some had laptops missing, and then just other stuff from classrooms. So that was a long list of items that were either missing, damaged, or they felt stolen. So we have that too.
We stayed in the at Link Incorporated. We had the people coming out of prison stay with us, formerly incarcerated. 2 things I can say from the storm that was positive for us. The unity that they had. I mean, we blocked in there for like 2 days, and they bonded, and we didn't have any electricity. I was cooking on a little crock pot and a little stove I had made up and tried to cook. I'm trying to cook for 24 people now. So I got a crock pot and a little hot plate, and I'm trying to cook dinner and have them something to eat and prepare. They working with me, and their camaraderie, the way they bonded together, because they all felt that bond, that closeness. And I think that happened in the same communities. A lot of communities just bonded together. That was a good thing. The second thing I can tell you that positive came out of it, unemployment went down because all my folks working. I'm talking about people from incarcerated. Every last one I'm working because there's plenty of work out there right now. There's plenty of construction work and plenty of work. So that's the one of the things that's positive. It's plenty of work. You can't find a job right now when there's something wrong. There's plenty of work.
No kidding. I mean, you see now hiring signs
everywhere. There's jobs galore, and that's one of the things directly from the storm. Unemployment should have went down in Wilmington because I know all of our folks. We get phone calls every day now with people. You got any guys for me today? What you doing? I got some roofs that got to be put on. I got shingles got to be put on, and those guys are coming out. And our females, they're working just right there beside them, working with them. So we've got plenty of work that came out of this. So if anything, if I'd like to say that came out.
One thing I do want to say about sort of the spirit of inside media baseball, but we as reporters are used to being told no by elected officials, by people on the street. No, I don't really want to talk about that. During Florence, after the storm, no one has told me no. If I go to someone's house and I say I want to talk about Florence, I want to talk about the storms in Bethany, the answer is always come in, I want to talk about it. And I think that says something about the people of this community. I think it says something about, frankly, the impact a disaster can have on you, and sort of just the healing power of talking about it. That fine, yeah, I'll talk to the newspaper guy about this.
Interesting.
You know, that is an incredible perspective, and it's so real. And I think everybody wants to talk about it, and I think the subconscious is saying, you know what, you survived that storm. You look at other storms where hundreds of people were killed, and you say, we had the potential to have a storm that could have wiped us out again. You survived it, and so you want to talk about it. Yeah, it had damage, but it will be repaired. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and people are talking about it.
Well, I think even when I'm talking to like city council people, you know, when they turn their recorder off, one of the first perspectives is, thank God that wasn't a category 4. I mean, that's like one of the first sentences, and everyone just kind of nods. And yeah, I think eyes are open right now to what needs to happen for this community to be more ready for it.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a good thing.
So I think they realized, what was it, many buildings can't sustain that. Where would you set up shelters? Will we have to bus everyone out of here if we had something like that coming for us?
I mean, it's single digits in the city.
And you would, when you say it's repaired now, you would think living on the water, this is something that should have been in the planning process, especially after Katrina. And I think that's one of the things I get from people, that we wasn't as prepared as we should have been, and we get a warning every year. It's not a hurricane season that don't go by. Wilmington's gonna get a warning. I'm from the peninsula in New Virginia, and I'm like, I moved down here. My brother's like, why you want a warning for? They get hurricane. They gonna get a warning. It's like we get a warning every year. It's like, we think it's just gonna keep bypassing us and bypassing us?
I completely agree with you. I think you're right, but keep in mind the last major storm to hit Wilmington was 1999, and half, 2/3 of the buildings in the city have been built since then. That got lost somewhere.
Yeah.
That got out of people's conscience.
Yeah.
And it's back now. And that's
Thank you.
positive.
Thank you.
So, and how are you holding institutions and government accountable now? What are some of the things you're looking at? What are some of the things you're doing to make sure that we sort of improve on the way we think about these disasters?
Well, WECT for one, you all saw the damage in Kelly. I mean, they just were not prepared for that. But there had been complaints, and the dam was breached, and it needed to be repaired. And supposedly letters were sent to congressional offices, and just no attention was paid to that. And then you have this catastrophic storm. So, yeah, we're putting people on notice. You've got to answer to this, because we weren't prepared for it. But it seems like in that instance, there could have been better preparation had it been addressed when the complaints come in.
And that's one thing too. A lot of the communities I know, Pender and Hanover County just had their hurricane after the report, like what they did wrong, what they did right, where an outside agency kind of studied and heard from their employees about, and it seems like they had some issues they really needed to work on as far as letting their staff know the plan. And that was the main thing that was lacking there. So it's, following up and seeing what is being done to make sure that everyone's on the same page and that we do have a proper plan in place before the next storm comes. Because if it comes, hopefully it won't be a massive one. But we know in the future Wilmington will get something else, and making sure that there is a plan and procedures to make sure we're not dealing with something as huge as we just did, where we have all the residents, people calling us wanting to know where to go for help. We want to be able to direct them somewhere, and that we have the proper food drops, just ways that where they're not left hanging. Like, I don't want to be able to talk to someone on the phone and say, well, I don't know, because that's not going to help them. Someone, we're safe and fine, but if they're calling us from an hour away, somewhere rural, there's not much to do except, hey, there's a group out of Raleigh that was coming in doing airdrops, which was great to see at the airport in Raleigh. Folks, they had a big organization there that people from that area would go drop off, and then you'd have someone, private planes, come to these areas, and they wanted to know, where do you need help? Whether it's Willard or Watha, these small little communities where folks can't get to their towns. So being able to know more about what to do and what to say when folks call. I think that would be key the next time?
I think we're really keyed in on the affordable housing issue. We have a story or two a week now about affordable housing, about things that are still down, about what governments are doing, especially in Wilmington, to address it. It is top of mind for us. Speaking of the action plans, one of the things that is beneficial about those plans, there's dates on there. The governments have given themselves timelines. So come June 2, you can call up the county and say, hey, you had 20 things you wanted to have done for this hurricane season. What's done? What's not done? Why didn't make it done? And that's something that will be done.
And y'all be monitoring that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in wrapping up, where do we go from here? What do you? Next time it hits, are we staying? You gonna stay again?
What's the category? No.
Good question.
Yeah. The category 5. Well.
Yeah. I think it opened our eyes a lot. I don't think I'll be staying again if it's 5. I'm not. My family left out of here. Every time there's a storm, I've always stayed because of the line of work I've done. When I was in healthcare work, and it's like, that's not. I saw so much. Yeah, it was the house situation. Yeah, that could have been. Yeah, that was serious. I said, no, I don't know. I don't think I'll do that anymore. But I'm not a journalist.
A category 5, I can tell you at this stage in my life, I would not.
Yeah.
I mean, I just would not. I don't regret anything I did with Hurricane Florence, but the torment that I went through, worried about my family, was pretty significant. I really wasn't worried that much about my husband. I knew he was going to be fine. I knew my twin sister was going to be fine where she was, but she was really on the verge of a nervous breakdown because she couldn't get back home. And she was gone for several days, and she was worried about me. And I'm being facetious when I say that about a nervous breakdown, but she was really flipping out and she couldn't get home. And then there was my cat. Yes, I'm a cat person. And bless her little heart, she was with my husband, but I was gone for several days. She didn't see me. She's meowing, he says, constantly. And she came back skinny as a rail. She lost weight. She stopped eating. And am I going to make a decision based on that? Yes, I am. Because these are the things that are important to me in my life right now. A category 4, category 3, yeah, I'm probably going to do it all over again. Category 5, no.
Not wrong.
And I'm just glad we are in our new building in Leland. Our old building downtown, which is no longer standing. That I've always said since then that I wish they wouldn't have torn it down. Like I think they tore it down just a couple of weeks before Florence, because just to see what would have happened. We had a very old building downtown on North Front Street.
Remember that.
And that, I don't know what would have held up there. It, very likely we would have been seeking shelter elsewhere.
What's that building?
50 years, I believe.
50s.
How about our building is older than that? And I'm amazed, truly amazed, that it has sustained the storms that it did. But Florence said, you know what?
I'm going to take you down a little bit.
Well, because we already, like, right there, the old building had already the cracks coming in the foundation, and we just,
But I think because it just stayed and stayed.
Yeah.
It hit us and just wouldn't go anywhere. It just whirled and whirled. I'm like, will you go about your business?
And then it going.
Right.
That's what cost so much.
Yeah, I think that's what scared a lot of people, because we're there I'm thinking, okay, we're over, and then he'll come back again. And think it's over.
Like climate change, right?
So right.
There are going to be other hurricanes that are picking up more moisture and raining down.
Yeah.
I mean, Florence is basically East Coast harbor. That's the
No.
We're happy WWAY in their new building too. They gave our operations pretty much shelter for a few days after the storm. We were washing over our building, so
The more the merrier. We were all doing the same thing, We were getting information, trying to let residents know the very latest. We're glad to have you guys.
We had chickens out at Link, and we couldn't find them. But we had chickens. We have eggs out there. We have a farm in the back, so the people coming out, they work the farm for us. The chickens. And the next day, chickens gone. Couldn't find the chickens. Chickens showed back up about 4 days later.
Did they really?
So they went to the wood. I don't know where they went, but look, about 4 days later, we started seeing them. One came back, the next one started coming back, and the next one came back. I said, there were the chickens right there. Look, they rolled on back. Don't know where they went, how they survived, or what they did. You know, the animals, watching the animals, it's like, I don't know how they made it. Just, they was gone. We looked out there, the cage, said, where the chickens gone? Storm done took them. And back the next day, Storm done cooking. All of a sudden, we saw one pop up. Okay, we got one. Next day, somebody else came, and the next day, so animals, it's cat. I thought about it with your cat. Animals or something when it comes to storms.
Well, that was hard too. A lot of people left thinking that it's not going to be that bad, or I'll be able to come home in a day or two, and they couldn't, and their house is underwater. And then the people left their animals. And that was a big rescue that was going on with groups going around and boats checking homes. And we had video of folks going in and coming out holding little dogs and putting them in, or in cats in cat carriers. And people did leave thinking, well, my cat, or I've left food, water, I'll be back. And then they couldn't get back, and their homes flooded. And that was a big, or people rescuing dogs that were left in pens, and it was starting to flood. So that was also a major issue, and I think opened a lot of folks' eyes about the storm and how bad
I think the picture I remember is the man riding a horse, walking down. He had the horse going down that big puddle, like he was riding a horse down, trying to get to safety. You know, there's a horse riding. A lot of animal pictures. All right, Ren, close us out.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for coming. This is a great dynamic conversation. I knew it would be. The right people were in the room, and I hope that we can talk again, say, a month or so, and get an update on how this recovery process is shaping up, and of course, with a particular eye on whether it's an equitable recovery process.
All right, family. I hope you all enjoyed the show for today. I will be back on the air on Monday. You all go watch some tournament this weekend. And North ACC, do your thing. We got to win some games this time. I want to say ACC Final Four. That's what I want to say. I want to say ACC. I want to see Duke and North Carolina Final. Wouldn't that be great? Duke and Carolina in the Final Four. Wouldn't that be? And I'm a Virginia fan. See, look at me. My brother gonna get me. My brother gonna get